I quietly locked the bathroom door from the outside while Jason and Veronica were still splashing around like teenagers, completely unaware that Madison's 62-year-old mother had just caught them in the act. I pulled out my phone and made 2 calls that would change everything. When Madison and David both arrived within 20 minutes, the fireworks were about to begin. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me tell you how I got to this delicious moment of revenge. Because, honey, this story is worth every second of your time. It was supposed to be a surprise birthday party for my daughter Madison. She was turning 36, and despite our recent tensions, I wanted to do something special for her. I'd driven to her house early that Saturday morning, using the spare key she'd given me months ago to set up decorations before the guests arrived. Madison had been doing incredibly well at her new job at Pinnacle Financial. After years of struggling in dead-end positions, she'd finally landed a role at this prestigious investment firm 8 months ago. The money was better than anything she'd ever made, and honestly, I was proud of her success. My little girl was finally thriving. But success, as I was about to learn, sometimes comes with a price. I walked into her beautiful townhouse, the one she could suddenly afford after landing this new position, carrying bags full of decorations, a homemade cake, and enough optimism to power a small city. The house was quiet, which was exactly what I expected at 9 in the morning. What I didn't expect was to hear voices coming from upstairs, specifically voices that didn't belong to my daughter. Now, I'm not one to snoop. Well, not usually, but when you hear your daughter's boyfriend's voice, mixed with what sounded distinctly like her best friend Veronica's laughter echoing from the direction of the master bathroom, maternal instincts kick in, or maybe it was just good old-fashioned nosiness. Either way, I found myself climbing those stairs with the stealth of a woman who'd raised 2 teenagers and knew how to catch them in the act. The bathroom door was slightly open, steam escaping into the hallway, and there they were. Jason Mitchell, the man I'd actually grown to like over the past few months, and Veronica Hayes, the woman who treated me like I was an inconvenient relic from Madison's past, enjoying what appeared to be a very intimate bubble bath. Well. This was certainly not the surprise party I'd planned. But as my grandmother used to say, when life hands you lemons, sometimes you need to make some very strategic lemonade. That's when I realized just how perfectly positioned I was to serve up some ice-cold justice. You know what's funny about catching people in compromising situations? The split second of pure shock before your brain starts calculating the best revenge. I stood there for exactly 3 seconds, listening to Veronica giggle about how Madison works so much she'll never suspect anything, before my mind shifted into what I like to call strategic grandmother mode. Because here's the thing about being 62. You've seen enough nonsense to recognize it immediately, and you've lived long enough to know exactly how to handle it. Let me back up and tell you how we got to this bathroom betrayal, because the setup makes the payoff so much sweeter. Madison started at Pinnacle Financial 8 months ago, and within weeks, her entire life transformed. Better salary, designer clothes, a new confidence that, frankly, I loved seeing in her. She'd struggled for so long after her divorce 3 years ago, and watching her rebuild her life was beautiful. Then she started bringing around new people from work. First was Jason, tall, charming, genuinely seemed to care about Madison. I actually liked him, which should have been my first warning sign. In my experience, when something seems too good to be true, it usually is. But Jason remembered my birthday, helped fix Madison's car, and treated her well. I thought maybe, just maybe, my daughter had finally found a good one. Then came Veronica. Oh, Veronica Hayes with her perfect blonde highlights and her condescending smile. From the moment Madison introduced us 3 months ago, I could smell the fake on her like cheap perfume. She had this way of talking to me like I was some confused elderly woman who couldn't possibly understand their sophisticated work dynamics. "Oh, Elizabeth," she'd say with that syrupy sweet voice, "Madison told me you're retired. That must be so peaceful for you. All that time to garden and watch your stories." Stories. Like I was some mindless woman glued to soap operas all day. I have a master's degree in education and spent 35 years shaping young minds. But sure, Veronica, reduce me to your stereotype of a useless old lady. The worst part? Madison defended her. Every time I tried to express my concerns about Veronica's obvious manipulation tactics, Madison would shut me down. "Mom, please. Veronica's been amazing to me at work. She's helped me navigate the office politics, introduced me to the right people. I need her friendship right now." Need. Such an interesting word choice. I'd met Veronica's husband, David, at Madison's work holiday party last month. Nice enough man, successful attorney, seemed genuinely devoted to his wife. He'd shown me pictures of their vacation to Italy, talked about their plans to start a family. The poor man had no idea his wife was sampling the company buffet, so to speak. And Jason? Sweet, attentive Jason, who brought Madison flowers and made her laugh? Apparently, he was also making Veronica very happy in my daughter's bathtub. Standing outside that bathroom door, listening to their intimate conversation about how easy it was to deceive Madison, I realized this wasn't just simple adultery. This felt calculated, organized. That's when I noticed Jason's wallet on the hallway table, carelessly dropped beside what looked like financial documents with Madison's name on them. My strategic grandmother brain started working overtime. These weren't just cheaters. These might be something much worse. Time to find out exactly what kind of game they were playing with my daughter's heart and her money. You want to know what 40 years of teaching teenagers taught me? How to move silently through a house when you're gathering evidence. Those financial documents on the hallway table were calling my name louder than a fire alarm. I tiptoed past the bathroom where Jason and Veronica were still conducting their secret business meeting and carefully picked up the papers. My reading glasses were in my purse downstairs, but I could see enough to make my blood pressure spike. Madison's banking information, investment account numbers, and what looked like a real estate listing for a house in the Bahamas with a price tag that would require cleaning out every penny Madison had saved. Well, honey, this just got infinitely more interesting. I quietly made my way back downstairs, my mind racing faster than my arthritic knees could carry me. This wasn't just an affair. This was a full-scale financial seduction, and my successful, intelligent daughter was apparently the target. The beautiful irony? They were so confident in their scheme that they'd gotten careless enough to carry out their affair in Madison's own house while plotting to steal her money. The audacity was almost impressive. I positioned myself by the front window where I could see the driveway and pulled out my phone. First call, Madison. "Mom, is everything okay? You sound weird." "Sweetheart, I need you to come home right now. There's been a plumbing emergency. Water everywhere. You need to see this." "A plumbing emergency? Mom, just call a plumber. I'm in the middle of—" "Madison." I used my teacher voice, the one that brooked no argument. "Come home. Now. Trust me on this one." I could hear her sigh, but she agreed to be there in 20 minutes. Second call was trickier. I scrolled through my phone until I found David Hayes's number, which I'd gotten at the holiday party when he'd offered to help with my estate planning. "David, this is Elizabeth, Madison's mom. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm at Madison's house and Veronica left her purse here. It has her medication in it, and she seemed really worried about missing a dose when I talked to her earlier. Complete fabrication, but delivered with the concerned sincerity I'd perfected over decades of parent-teacher conferences. Oh, that's strange. Veronica said she was going shopping with her sister today. But yes, she does need her medication. I can swing by and pick it up. Perfect. Madison's address is 1247 Oak Street. I'll wait for you." 25 minutes. That's how long I had to watch Jason and Veronica's world implode. I spent the time examining those financial documents more carefully. Jason wasn't just Madison's boyfriend. He was apparently also her unofficial financial advisor. The house in the Bahamas was listed under a company called Mitchell Holdings, LLC. 3 guesses who owned that company. The investment documents showed Madison had recently moved significant money into high-yield opportunities that Jason had recommended. Opportunities that, based on the paperwork, seemed designed more to move money out of Madison's accounts than to generate returns. My daughter, my brilliant, successful daughter, was being systematically robbed by people she trusted, people she'd brought into her home, her bed, her life. The sound of a car in the driveway snapped me back to the present. Madison's Honda Civic, right on time. I walked calmly to the front door, stepped outside, and locked it behind me with my spare key. "Mom, what are you doing outside? And why do you look like the cat who ate the canary?" "Oh, sweetheart," I said, settling into one of her porch chairs like I had all the time in the world. "We're going to wait right here for David Hayes to arrive, and then we're all going inside together to solve this little mystery." Madison looked confused. "David Hayes? Veronica's husband? Mom, what is going on?" "Patience, darling. Good things come to those who wait. And justice? Justice is about to be served with a side of very hot water." Another car pulled into the driveway. David Hayes, looking concerned, and carrying what he believed was an emergency medication run for his beloved wife. "Mr. Hayes," I called out cheerfully. "Perfect timing. Madison, why don't you unlock the door and we can all go inside together? I think you're both going to find this very educational." The moment Madison unlocked the front door, the sound of laughter and splashing water from upstairs hit us like a brick wall. David's face went from confusion to understanding to devastation in about 3 seconds flat. "That's my wife," he whispered. "And my boyfriend," Madison added, her voice barely audible. "And my daughter's trust fund being liquidated as we speak," I said, holding up the financial documents I'd discovered. Because here's what I'd figured out while sitting on that porch. This wasn't just about sex. This was about money, manipulation, and a con game sophisticated enough to fool a smart woman like Madison. David looked like he might be sick. Madison looked like she might commit murder. And me? Well, I was just getting started. "Now, before we go upstairs and interrupt their little spa day," I said calmly, "I think we should all understand exactly what we're dealing with here." I spread the documents on Madison's kitchen table like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "Madison, honey, did you know you've transferred nearly $200,000 into investment accounts controlled by Mitchell Holdings LLC in the past 3 months? Her face went white. "Jason said those were safe investments, high-yield bonds. He's been helping me plan for retirement." "And David, did you know your wife has been helping Jason convince Madison to liquidate her savings for a real estate venture in the Bahamas?" David picked up the property listing with shaking hands. "Veronica told me she was working late most nights. Special projects with new clients." "Oh, she's definitely been working on something special," I said. The laughter upstairs had stopped. Apparently, our voices had carried. "Mrs. Walker?" Jason's voice called from upstairs, uncertain now. "Is that you?" I looked at Madison and David. "What do you say we go upstairs and have a little family meeting?" Madison was already moving, her shock replaced by a fury that reminded me of the toddler tantrums she used to throw when someone took her toys. David followed, looking like a man walking to his own execution. I brought up the rear, carrying the financial documents and feeling more satisfied than I had in months. We found them frantically trying to get dressed in the bathroom, water everywhere, towels clutched to their bodies like shields against the judgment they knew was coming. "Well, well," Madison said, her teacher mother's sarcasm apparently inherited. "Don't mind us. Just coming up to check on the plumbing. Seems like there's been some overflow." Veronica tried to speak first. "Madison, this isn't what it looks like." "Oh, shut up, Veronica," I said pleasantly. "We all have eyes. What this looks like is exactly what this is. The interesting question is how long you two have been planning to steal my daughter's money along with her trust." Jason wrapped a towel around himself, trying to regain some dignity. "Elizabeth, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding," David said quietly, "is how I married someone capable of this betrayal." Madison was staring at Jason like she'd never seen him before. "The investments, Jason, the retirement planning, the house in the Bahamas, was any of it real?" "Madison, baby, I can explain." "Don't you baby me, not while you're standing naked in my bathroom with my supposed best friend after convincing me to empty my savings accounts." The silence that followed was beautiful. The kind of silence that happens right before everything falls apart for the people who deserve it. Veronica tried one last manipulation. "Madison, you don't understand the pressure we've been under at work. The company's been restructuring. People are losing jobs. We were trying to protect you, help you secure your financial future by stealing from me, by creating opportunities you wouldn't have found on your own." I had to hand it to her. Even caught red-handed, Veronica was still trying to gaslight everyone in the room. That's when I decided it was time to drop the real bombshell. "David, you might want to call your attorney. Because according to these documents, your wife has been using your joint accounts to fund this little venture too. The look on Veronica's face was absolutely priceless. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Oh, and Madison, you might want to check your computer, right? Because I have a feeling our friends here have been accessing more than just your heart and your bathroom. Sometimes revenge is a dish best served cold, but other times it's best served immediately while everyone's still dripping wet and their lies are falling apart faster than cheap mascara in the rain. My computer? Madison's voice was dangerously quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded the destruction of kingdoms and the ending of relationships. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I'd taken of the documents. Honey, while Romeo and Juliet were playing house upstairs, I did a little investigating. These aren't just investment opportunities. They're systematic theft disguised as financial planning. Jason was frantically trying to put on his pants while maintaining some shred of dignity. Madison, you have to understand, we never meant for it to go this far. Oh, it went exactly as far as you meant it to, I interrupted. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Both of you. Veronica finally found her voice. Elizabeth, you're making assumptions based on paperwork you don't understand. Sweetheart, I may be 62, but I'm not stupid. I know a con when I see one, and I've seen enough of them to recognize the signs. David was staring at his wife like she was a stranger. Veronica, the joint account. The one you said was for the house renovations. How much is missing? Nothing's missing, David. It's invested. In a company owned by the man you're sleeping with in another woman's bathtub? The fight went out of her completely. For the first time since I'd known her. Veronica Hayes had nothing sarcastic or condescending to say. Madison walked past all of us and went straight to her home office. We followed like some bizarre parade of betrayal and discovery. She turned on her computer and started checking her accounts. Oh my God, she whispered after a few minutes of typing. Jason, the retirement account. The one you said was being rolled over into a higher yield option. It's empty. Madison, $47,000, gone. Transferred yesterday to Mitchell Holdings, LLC. Jason looked like a man watching his life collapse in real time. I can explain. The investment needed to be moved quickly. Market opportunity. I was going to tell you. When? Before or after you disappeared to the Bahamas with my money and my best friend? I walked over to Madison's computer and pointed to a series of transfers she hadn't noticed yet. Honey, check these dates against your work schedule. Notice anything interesting? Madison's eyes widened as she scrolled through the transactions. Every transfer happened on days when I was working late, or when Veronica convinced me to stay overnight for those special projects. Special projects, David repeated hollowly. She told me those were client emergencies. They were client emergencies, I said. Madison was the client, and her trust was the emergency they needed to exploit. Veronica was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks like black tears of guilt. We never meant to hurt anyone. The company really is downsizing. We were both going to lose our jobs. We needed a way out. So you decided to steal your way out, Madison said, using my money and my trust to fund your escape plan. Jason tried one more time to salvage the situation. Madison, we can fix this. The investments are real. We can get your money back. The only thing getting fixed, I said calmly, is going to be the criminal charges for fraud and theft. That's when David pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. David, wait. Veronica started toward him. Don't say another word to me. Ever. As David dialed 911, I looked around the room at the wreckage these two had created. Madison's savings destroyed, David's marriage shattered, trust broken in ways that would take years to repair. But as I watched my daughter's shock transform into determination, I realized something important. Madison was stronger than they'd counted on, and she had something they'd underestimated. She had a mother who'd spent 40 years dealing with manipulative people and who wasn't about to let anyone hurt her daughter. Detective Harrison, this is David Hayes. I need to report a financial crime in progress. Multiple victims, significant theft, and I believe we have all the evidence you'll need. As David gave the police Madison's address, I looked at Jason and Veronica one last time. You know what your biggest mistake was? I asked them. Assuming that an old woman like me wouldn't understand your sophisticated scheme. But here's something you apparently never learned. Never underestimate someone who's been around long enough to see every con game in the book. The sound of approaching sirens was the sweetest music I'd heard in years, but something told me this story was just getting started. Because as I was about to discover, the rabbit hole of their deception went much deeper than simple theft. Elizabeth's story, chapters 6 to 10. The police arrived faster than I expected, which was perfect timing because Jason and Veronica were starting to realize their fairy tale was about to become a criminal case study. Detective Harrison was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who took one look at the scene and immediately separated everyone for individual questioning. But here's where being a retired teacher comes in handy. I know how to organize evidence. And honey, I had organized the hell out of their little scheme. Detective Harrison, I said, handing her a manila folder I'd prepared while we waited. You'll want to see these documents. Financial transfers, property listings, and what appears to be a timeline for systematically draining my daughter's accounts. She flipped through the papers, her eyebrows rising with each page. Ma'am, how did you obtain these documents? They were carelessly left on my daughter's hallway table while the suspects were conducting business in her bathroom. Madison was being questioned in the living room, David in the kitchen, while Jason and Veronica were separated in the dining room and front porch respectively. Standard procedure, according to Detective Harrison. What wasn't standard was when my phone rang 20 minutes into the investigation. Unknown number. Elizabeth, this is Patricia Morgan from Pinnacle Financial. I'm the head of our internal security division. I understand there's been an incident involving some of our employees. Now that was interesting. How had Pinnacle Financial learned about our little situation so quickly? Yes, there has been an incident, Ms. Morgan, though I'm curious how you found out about it. We've been conducting our own internal investigation into some irregularities in client accounts. Your daughter's name came up, along with several others. I think we need to talk. Several others. This just kept getting better. I'm at my daughter's house with the police right now, Ms. Morgan. Perfect. I'm 5 minutes away with FBI Agent Rodriguez. We've been tracking this for weeks. FBI? I looked through the window at Detective Harrison questioning Veronica on the porch. This wasn't just simple theft anymore. When Patricia Morgan and Agent Rodriguez arrived, they brought with them a briefcase full of evidence that made my little document collection look like kindergarten homework. Mrs. Walker, Agent Rodriguez said, after introducing himself, you've stumbled into the middle of a major financial fraud investigation. Jason Mitchell and Veronica Hayes are part of a larger network that's been targeting high-net-worth clients across 3 states. Patricia spread out photographs and financial records on Madison's kitchen table. Your daughter wasn't their first victim, or their last. We've identified at least 12 other clients who've been systematically robbed using the same romantic manipulation tactics. The scope of it was staggering. Jason wasn't just some opportunistic boyfriend. He was a professional con artist who specialized in targeting successful women through workplace connections. Veronica was his inside woman, identifying potential marks and providing access to their personal information. The house in the Bahamas, Agent Rodriguez continued, purchased with funds stolen from their previous victims. They've been running this scheme for 2 years. Madison joined us in the kitchen, her face pale but determined. How many women fell for this? 12 confirmed victims so far. Total theft approaching $1.8 million. I felt a surge of pride mixed with fury. Pride because Madison was strong enough to survive this betrayal. Fury because these parasites had destroyed so many lives. But here's what's interesting, Patricia said, looking directly at me. You're the first family member to catch them in the act. Every other victim discovered the theft only after they'd disappeared. What made the difference? Detective Harrison asked. I thought about it for a moment. I never trusted Veronica. Something about her attitude toward me felt calculated. And Jason seemed too perfect, too accommodating. In my experience, when someone works that hard to charm you, they're usually hiding something. Agent Rodriguez nodded. Classic manipulation tactics. They research their targets extensively, identify vulnerabilities, and then exploit them. Veronica would have spent weeks learning Madison's insecurities and relationship history. Which explains why she was so dismissive of me, I realized. She needed Madison isolated from family who might ask uncomfortable questions. Patricia pulled out a laptop and showed us surveillance footage. We've been watching them for 6 weeks. This video shows Jason and Veronica meeting with their handler, the person coordinating the entire operation. The video showed Jason and Veronica in what appeared to be a hotel restaurant, sitting across from a well-dressed man in his 50s. I couldn't make out his face clearly, but something about his posture seemed familiar. "Do you recognize him?" Agent Rodriguez asked. I studied the screen more carefully, squinting at the figure. "Maybe. Something about the way he carries himself, but I can't place it." Madison leaned closer to the laptop. "Oh my God, that's Richard Carlson. He's the senior partner at Pinnacle Financial. My boss." The room went completely silent. "Your boss is their handler?" Detective Harrison asked. "It would make sense," Patricia said grimly. "Someone in senior management would have access to all client financial information. He could identify the best targets and provide the inside information needed to execute the cons." I sat back in my chair, processing this revelation. Madison wasn't just the victim of a romantic scam. She was the target of an organized criminal enterprise led by her own employer. "How long has Richard been planning this?" Madison whispered. Agent Rodriguez closed the laptop. "Based on our investigation, at least 2 years. He's been systematically identifying female employees with substantial assets and orchestrating elaborate schemes to steal from them." "And when they've been cleaned out?" I asked. "They disappear. New identities, new cities, new victims. Until now, it's been the perfect crime." Detective Harrison looked around the room. "What changed? Why did you catch them this time?" I thought about Elizabeth the teacher, Elizabeth the mother, Elizabeth the woman who'd spent 62 years learning to read people and situations. "Because," I said finally, "I'm old enough to have seen every con game in the book and stubborn enough to trust my instincts even when everyone tells me I'm wrong. But as I was about to discover, even my instincts hadn't prepared me for how deep this conspiracy really went. You know what's worse than discovering your daughter's boyfriend and best friend are thieves? Finding out they're part of a criminal organization run by her own boss. But you know what's even worse than that? Realizing you've met the mastermind before." I was staring at that surveillance video when it hit me like a freight train loaded with very uncomfortable memories. "Agent Rodriguez, can you replay that section where he turns toward the camera?" The video played again, and this time I saw it clearly. The way he tilted his head when he laughed. The gesture he made with his left hand when making a point. "I know him," I said quietly. "Richard Carlson. I know him." Madison looked at me sharply. "What do you mean you know him? From where?" "From your father's funeral, sweetheart. He was there." The room went very still. "My father's funeral?" Madison's voice was barely a whisper. "But Dad died 3 years ago, long before I started working at Pinnacle Financial." Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. "Mrs. Walker, are you certain about this?" Oh, I was certain. The kind of certain you get when someone appears at the worst moment of your life and offers help you don't need from a stranger you've never met. "He approached me after the service," I explained. "Said he was sorry for our loss, that he'd heard wonderful things about Robert's work in the community. He gave me his business card and suggested that if Madison ever needed career guidance, he'd be happy to help." Patricia Morgan was taking notes furiously. "Did you keep the card?" "It's probably in my purse somewhere." I remember thinking it was odd that a stranger would approach a grieving widow at her husband's funeral to offer career advice for her daughter. Madison sank into a chair. "He's been planning this for 3 years? Since Dad's funeral?" "It would appear so," Agent Rodriguez said grimly. "He probably researched your family after your father's death, identified Madison as a potential target when she was vulnerable after the divorce, and then orchestrated her recruitment to Pinnacle Financial." Detective Harrison was reviewing her notes. "So, the job offer, the meeting Jason, befriending Veronica, none of it was coincidence?" "None of it," Patricia confirmed. "We're looking at a sophisticated long-term con that began with targeting Madison specifically." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "Agent Rodriguez, how many other women has he recruited this way? Identified at vulnerable moments and then systematically destroyed?" "We're still investigating, but based on what we've uncovered, Richard Carlson has been running this operation for at least 5 years. We estimate somewhere between 20 and 30 victims. 20 to 30 women. 20 to 30 families destroyed. All for what? Money that would never be enough to fill the emptiness where a soul should be." Madison was crying now, Not just for herself, but for all those other women who'd trusted the wrong people. How did I not see it? How was I so blind? Because you're a good person who assumes other people are good too, I said firmly. And because they're professionals who make their living exploiting that goodness. Agent Rodriguez's phone buzzed. He answered it briefly, then hung up with a grim expression. That was my partner. Richard Carlson just boarded a flight to Grand Cayman. We think he got word that the operation was compromised. He's running? Madison asked. They always run when their schemes fall apart, Detective Harrison said. But don't worry, we have extradition treaties. Patricia was already on her laptop. I'm freezing all accounts associated with Mitchell Holdings and Carlson's personal finances. Whatever money we can recover will be returned to the victims. What about Jason and Veronica? I asked. Agent Rodriguez smiled. The first time I'd seen him look pleased all day. They're going to federal prison for a very long time. Conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, identity theft. We have enough charges to keep them busy until they're collecting Social Security. But I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. Agent Rodriguez, I want to help catch Richard Carlson. Everyone in the room looked at me like I'd announced my intention to join the circus. Mrs. Walker, I appreciate your willingness to assist, but this is an active federal investigation. And I'm the one person in this room who's actually met him face to face. Who's spoken with him, who might be able to help you understand how he operates. Madison grabbed my hand. Mom, absolutely not. This man is dangerous. Sweetheart, I'm 62 years old. I've raised 2 children, taught high school for 40 years, and survived your father's death. I think I can handle one middle-aged criminal with delusions of grandeur. Agent Rodriguez was considering it. What exactly did you have in mind? He approached me once before when I was vulnerable. What if I gave him another opportunity? Made myself look like an available target? Absolutely not, Detective Harrison said immediately. Civilians don't participate in active operations. But I wouldn't be participating as a civilian, I said with my sweetest smile. I'd be participating as bait. The silence that followed told me I had their attention. Think about it, I continued. He knows Madison's been compromised. He knows his operation is blown. But he might not know how much we've figured out about him personally. If he thinks there's still a chance to recover something from this disaster, Agent Rodriguez was nodding slowly. If you contacted him, claimed you were trying to understand what happened to Madison's money, acted confused and vulnerable, he might see an opportunity to manipulate the mother of a victim, clean up loose ends while making one final score. Patricia was shaking her head. It's too dangerous. This man has destroyed dozens of lives. Exactly, I said, which is why he needs to be stopped. And I'm the only one here who can get close to him. But even as I made my case, I knew the real reason I wanted to be involved. Richard Carlson had made a critical error when he chose to target my family. He'd underestimated what a mother will do to protect her daughter. 3 days later, I was sitting in my living room wearing a wire that cost more than my car and feeling like the most dangerous 62-year-old woman in America. Agent Rodriguez had finally agreed to let me contact Richard Carlson, but only under strict supervision and with enough backup to invade a small country. The plan was simple. I would call Richard, pretend to be a confused older woman trying to understand what had happened to Madison's money, and hopefully convince him to meet with me. If he took the bait, we'd have him. Remember, Agent Rodriguez said through my earpiece, act confused but not suspicious. You're a grieving mother who doesn't understand financial crimes. You just want answers. Patricia Morgan was monitoring from a van outside my house, along with Detective Harrison and half the FBI's white-collar crime division. Madison was safely tucked away at a hotel under police protection, probably watching this circus on surveillance feeds. I dialed Richard's number with hands steadier than they had any right to be. Richard Carlson speaking. Mr. Carlson, this is Elizabeth Walker, Madison's mother. I hope you remember me from my husband's funeral. A pause. Then that smooth, practiced voice I remembered from 3 years ago. Of course, Mrs. Walker. I was so sorry to hear about the difficulties Madison has been experiencing. Difficulties. Like systematic theft was just an unfortunate misunderstanding. That's actually why I'm calling, I said, letting my voice quaver slightly. I'm so confused about everything that's happened. The police were asking about investments and accounts I've never heard of. I was hoping you might be able to help me understand. I'd be happy to help in any way I can, Mrs. Walker. This must be very overwhelming for you. It is. Madison tries to explain things to me, but you know how young people are with technology and finances. I just can't keep up. Agent Rodriguez's voice crackled in my earpiece. Perfect. Keep playing the confused grandmother angle. Perhaps, Richard continued, we could meet for coffee? I could review the situation with you and explain things in simpler terms. Hook, line, and sinker. Oh, would you? That would be so kind. I'm just at a loss about what to do. Of course. How about tomorrow afternoon? There's a lovely cafe called Sterling's on 5th Street. Very quiet. Perfect for a private conversation. That sounds wonderful. 2 o'clock? Perfect. Mrs. Walker, I want you to know that despite what's happened, I still consider Madison family. Pinnacle Financial takes care of its own. After I hung up, Agent Rodriguez's team spent the next hour explaining exactly how they plan to turn Sterling's Cafe into the most surveilled coffee shop in criminal history. But I had my own plans for Mr. Richard Carlson. The next afternoon, I arrived at Sterling's 15 minutes early, wearing my best concerned grandmother outfit and enough hidden recording equipment to start my own television station. The cafe had been quietly emptied of regular customers and restocked with undercover agents posing as coffee drinkers. Richard arrived precisely on time, looking every inch the successful businessman in his expensive suit and practiced smile. Mrs. Walker, he said, taking my hands in both of his, thank you for reaching out. I can't imagine how difficult this must be. We ordered coffee. Decaf for me, regular for the man who was about to have his entire world turned upside down, and settled into a corner booth that had been carefully chosen to optimize surveillance recording. Now then, Richard said, pulling out a tablet and several official-looking documents, let me explain what appears to have happened with Madison's accounts. For the next 20 minutes, he spun an elaborate tale of employee misconduct, rogue investment schemes, and unfortunate misunderstandings. Jason and Veronica were portrayed as criminals who had acted without authorization. Madison was presented as an innocent victim whom the company was working hard to protect. It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed every word. So you see, he concluded, while this situation is tragic, it's important to understand that Pinnacle Financial had no knowledge of these unauthorized activities. I see, I said slowly. So Jason and Veronica acted completely on their own? Absolutely. Pinnacle Financial has the highest ethical standards. We would never condone such behavior. That's when I decided to spring my little trap. Mr. Carlson, I have to ask you something, and please forgive me if this seems presumptuous. Of course, Mrs. Walker, please ask me anything. I looked at him with my best confused grandmother expression. At my husband's funeral, when you gave me your card and mentioned that you might be able to help Madison's career, did you already know about her financial situation then? For just a moment, his practiced smile flickered, just long enough for me to see the calculating mind behind the mask. I'm sorry, Mrs. Walker. I'm not sure I understand the question. Well, it's just that Madison had substantial savings even 3 years ago, and you seem to know quite a bit about our family circumstances. I was wondering if perhaps you'd already identified her as someone who might benefit from your investment services. The silence stretched just a beat too long. Mrs. Walker, I think perhaps you're reading more into a simple gesture of condolence than was intended, but I could see it in his eyes now. The recognition that I wasn't the confused old woman I was pretending to be. The dawning realization that this meeting wasn't going according to his plan. You know what's interesting about being my age, Mr. Carlson? I said, dropping the quavering grandmother voice entirely. You develop a sixth sense for when someone is lying to you. His face went completely still. And Mr. Carlson, you've been lying to me from the moment you sat down. That's when Agent Rodriguez and his team moved in. The look on Richard Carlson's face when he realized he'd been outsmarted by a confused grandmother was worth every terrifying moment of the past week. As federal agents surrounded our table, his mask of professional concern finally slipped completely. Mrs. Walker, he said through gritted teeth, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but, oh, I know exactly what game I'm playing, I interrupted pleasantly. It's called Catch the Criminal Who Destroyed My Daughter's Life. And congratulations. Mr. Carlson, you just lost. Agent Rodriguez was reading him his rights, while other agents confiscated his tablet and documents. The cafe full of customers revealed themselves to be law enforcement, and Richard Carlson's carefully constructed world collapsed in real time. But the best part? We weren't done yet. "Mr. Carlson," Agent Rodriguez said after finishing the Miranda warning, "we have a few more things to show you." They led us to a back room of the cafe where Patricia Morgan had set up a presentation that would have made my old teaching colleagues proud. Charts, timelines, financial records, and surveillance photos covered every available surface. "This is what we call evidence," Patricia explained to Richard with professional satisfaction. 2 years of investigation into your operation. Every victim, every transaction, every crime you've committed. The scope of the evidence was overwhelming. Richard had targeted women across 3 states, using a network of accomplices like Jason and Veronica to systematically rob them of their life savings. The total theft exceeded $4 million. "But here's my personal favorite," Agent Rodriguez said, pulling up surveillance footage on a laptop. "Video of you meeting with Jason and Veronica 2 days ago at the Grand Cayman airport." Richard's face went ashen. "That's impossible. You never what? Never tried to flee the country when you realized your operation was compromised? Never attempted to access offshore accounts containing stolen money?" The video clearly showed Richard at the airport, carrying luggage and looking like a man in a hurry to disappear forever. "We've been tracking your movements since Mrs. Walker first contacted us," Patricia added. "Every phone call, every financial transaction, every desperate attempt to save yourself." I watched Richard process the reality of his situation. No escape route, no way to talk his way out, no innocent explanation that would make this all go away. "You want to know what your real mistake was?" I asked him quietly. He looked at me with a mixture of fury and defeat. "You assumed that because I'm old, I must be helpless. Because I'm a woman, I must be easy to manipulate. Because I'm a mother, I must be too emotional to think clearly." Agent Rodriguez was smiling now, enjoying the show. "But here's what you didn't count on," I continued. "I've spent 40 years dealing with teenagers who thought they were smarter than me. I've raised 2 children through every possible crisis and challenge. I've survived my husband's death and rebuilt my life from scratch." Richard was staring at me like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. "So when some middle-aged con artist thinks he can target my family, when some pathetic excuse for a human being decides to destroy my daughter's life for money," I leaned closer to him across the table. "That man is about to discover what happens when you underestimate the wrong mother." Agent Rodriguez placed a hand on my shoulder. "Mrs. Walker, I think Mr. Carlson understands the situation now." They led Richard away in handcuffs, but not before I got to deliver one final message. "Mr. Carlson," I called after him, "when you're sitting in your federal prison cell for the next 20 years, I want you to remember something. Every single day, you're going to wake up knowing you were outsmarted by a 62-year-old retired teacher. And Mr. Carlson," I added with my sweetest smile, "I want you to remember that justice isn't just served cold. Sometimes it's served by someone old enough to know exactly how to make it hurt." After he was gone, Agent Rodriguez turned to me with genuine admiration. "Mrs. Walker, in 30 years of law enforcement, I've never seen anything quite like what you just did." "What did I do?" "You took down a criminal organization that had been operating successfully for 5 years. You recovered millions of dollars for dozens of victims. You probably saved countless other women from being targeted in the future." I thought about Madison, safe now and beginning to rebuild her life. I thought about all those other women who'd lost everything to Richard's schemes. I thought about justice finally being served. "Agent Rodriguez," I said, I just did what any mother would do. I protected my family. But even as I said it, I knew there was one more thing I needed to do to make this story complete. 6 months later, I was sitting in the federal courthouse watching Richard Carlson receive a sentence of 25 years in federal prison. Jason got 15 years, Veronica got 12, and the judge made sure to emphasize that their crimes had destroyed dozens of families and violated the most basic principles of human trust. Madison was beside me, looking stronger and more confident than I'd seen her in years. The money, most of it had been recovered and returned to the victims. More importantly, she'd survived something that would have destroyed a weaker person. But the best part of this whole story happened after the sentencing, when we were walking out of the courthouse. "Mom," Madison said, stopping on the courthouse steps. I need to ask you something. What's that? Sweetheart? Did you really not suspect anything until you caught them that morning? Or did you know something was wrong before then? I smiled, remembering all those little moments that had added up to a picture I didn't like. Veronica's condescending attitude, Jason's too perfect behavior, the way Madison's personality had changed subtly over the months. Honey, I've been suspicious of Veronica since the day I met her. Something about her just felt wrong. And Jason, well, any man who tries that hard to impress me is usually hiding something. Madison laughed, the first genuinely carefree laugh I'd heard from her in months. But you never said anything? I tried to. Remember? You told me to mind my own business and that I was being an overprotective mother. I did say that, didn't I? Multiple times, along with accusing me of being jealous of your new friends and unable to accept that you were successful. Madison winced at the memory. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. I took her arm as we walked toward the car. Sweetheart, you don't need to apologize. You were being manipulated by professionals. The important thing is that you're stronger now, smarter now, and you'll never let anyone take advantage of you again. How can you be so sure? Because you're my daughter. And if there's one thing I've learned in 62 years, it's that we Walker women are a lot tougher than we look. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Agent Rodriguez. Mrs. Walker, I have some news I thought you'd want to hear. Good news, I hope. The best. Richard Carlson's case has been featured in FBI training materials as an example of how citizen cooperation can break major criminal operations. Your actions are being used to teach other agents how to work with civilian witnesses. I had to laugh at that. Agent Rodriguez, are you telling me I'm now part of FBI curriculum? Unofficially, yes. There's even talk of inviting you to speak at the Academy about recognizing and responding to financial fraud targeting families. Well, I always did enjoy teaching, but the real victory came 2 months later when Madison called me with unexpected news. Mom, I got a new job. Wonderful. Where? The FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Apparently, my experience as a victim, combined with my finance background, makes me an ideal candidate to help other people who've been targeted by similar schemes. I felt a surge of pride so strong it nearly knocked me over. My daughter had turned her trauma into purpose, her victimization into a way to help others. Madison, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. Mom, I want you to know something. What you did for me, the way you fought for me even when I didn't appreciate it, that showed me what real strength looks like. I want to be that person for other people. After I hung up, I sat in my garden with a cup of coffee and thought about how the whole nightmare had ended. Richard Carlson would spend the rest of his productive years in federal prison. Jason and Veronica were facing similar fates. The stolen money had been returned. Madison was not only recovered, but thriving in work that gave her life meaning. And me? Well, I'd discovered something I didn't know about myself at 62 years old. I'd learned that being underestimated by the wrong people can be the most powerful weapon you'll ever have. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Mom, my first case starts Monday. A financial fraud ring targeting elderly women in retirement communities. Any advice? I typed back, trust your instincts, protect the vulnerable, and remember that the bad guys always underestimate the good guys. Oh, and sweetheart. Yeah? Make sure they know that this particular good guy has a mother who taught her how to fight. 6 months later, Madison's team had dismantled the retirement community fraud ring and arrested 12 people. The local newspaper ran a feature story about the mother-daughter duo who'd become an unofficial force for justice in financial crimes. They called us the Walker Women and described us as proof that experience, determination, and family loyalty remain the most powerful tools in the fight against white-collar crime. I kept a copy of that article on my refrigerator right next to Madison's FBI Academy graduation photo, because sometimes the best revenge isn't just seeing the bad guys get what they deserve. Sometimes the best revenge is turning your pain into purpose and your experience into a way to protect others. And sometimes the best revenge is simply proving that a 62-year-old mother will always be more dangerous than any criminal who thinks age equals weakness. Richard Carlson learned that lesson the hard way. But then again, some people only learn when the lesson costs them everything. And in my book, that's exactly the price they deserve to pay. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.